Hello everyone. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment with where you from and what time it is. That way, YouTube will keep pulling you stories like this. Now, let the shadows take over. The first time I realized something was wrong with my locker, it wasn't because anything was missing, it was because something was added. It was a Tuesday morning, second semester of junior year, when I opened it and saw a folded piece of paper on the top shelf. Crisp, like it had been placed there carefully. At first I thought maybe it was from one of my friends. People passed notes all the time, though usually they got slipped under doors or desks, not tucked into lockers. I unfolded it. It said, "Don't stay after 7. That was it. No name, no explanation. Just those words, written in sloppy blue ink. Now, if this had been any other locker in Franklin High, I probably would have crumpled it and laughed it off as a dumb prank. But it wasn't just any locker, it was 312. And everyone at my school knew about 312. See, back in 2005, a senior named Tyler Brandt had that locker. One morning, he just never showed up for class. His books were still inside. His jacket, too. But Tyler himself? Gone. The cops searched everywhere. His house, his friends' houses, the woods behind the football field. Nothing. Not a trace. Some people thought he ran away. Others whispered about worse things. But after that, Locker 3 on 12 was left empty. For years. Until me. A week earlier, my original locker jammed, and when I asked the janitor, Mr. Hayes, if he could fix it, he just shook his head and said, "Use 312. It's open." I'd laughed nervously and said, "The haunted one? For real?" He didn't laugh. He just stared at me with these tired gray eyes and said, "Either take it or carry your books." So I took it. That note stayed on my mind all day. Don't stay after 7. What was that supposed to mean? Don't stay in the halls? Don't stay in the school? Or don't stay alive? It bothered me enough that at lunch I mentioned it to my best friend Jamie. "Dude, someone's just messing with you," he said through a mouthful of fries. "That locker's been a punchline since we were kids." "Yeah," I said, but it didn't feel like a joke. That night, basketball practice ran late. By the time I got back to my locker, it was 7:20. I was already thinking about the note. My hands were clammy when I spun the lock open. Inside, taped neatly to the back wall, was another piece of paper. It said, "I told you not to stay." I froze. My throat felt like it closed up. The hallway around me was empty. Every other locker shut tight, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. My first instinct was to rip it down, so I did, but that didn't help. The paper felt warm in my hands, like someone had just placed it there. I didn't wait to find out if there'd be more. I grabbed my backpack and booked it out of the school, heart hammering all the way home. The next morning, I almost didn't open the locker. But when I did, there was something waiting for me again. A Polaroid photo. It was me, from the night before, walking down the empty hallway with my backpack. I dropped it like it burned me. My eyes darted up and down the hall, but there was no one, no camera, no explanation. Jamie didn't believe me until I showed him the photo. His face went pale. "Bro, somebody's stalking you. From inside a locked building? With a Polaroid camera? At the exact time I was here?" I shot back. He didn't have an answer. By the end of that week, more stuff started showing up. Not just notes and photos. One morning, my house key was sitting on the top shelf. Another day, a page ripped from my math notebook, something I'd been using just hours earlier in class. It was like someone was reaching into my life and leaving proof of it inside 312. I stopped sleeping. Every creak in the house at night made me think someone was inside. Every locker slam at school made me flinch. I begged Mr. Hayes for a new locker. He just shook his head. "You got 312 now. Can't switch it." The way he said it, almost final, made my skin crawl. 2 weeks into this nightmare, The escalation peaked. I stayed late one night for tutoring in the library. By the time I left, the halls were dark, shadows pooling under the lockers. My sneakers squeaked against the waxed floor. When I got to 312, the door was already cracked open. Inside was a dusty yearbook. The cover said Franklin High 2005. My stomach twisted. My hands trembled as I opened it, flipping to the senior portraits. And there he was, Tyler Brandt, smiling like nothing was wrong, except someone had carved deep scratches across his face. And tucked inside the page was another Polaroid. It was me, asleep in my bed. I swear I couldn't breathe. My knees almost gave out right there in the hall. Somehow I forced myself to slam the locker shut and bolt, sneakers slapping the tile. But the sound that followed me wasn't just my own footsteps. The lockers around me started rattling, one by one. Doors slamming open and shut, like something invisible was running alongside me, trying to herd me. I skidded around the corner toward the stairwell. The doors wouldn't budge, locked tight. I pounded on them until my fists hurt, then spun around. And that's when I saw it. A figure standing halfway down the hall, backlit by the flickering fluorescence. It stepped out from 312, slow and deliberate. Its body was tall, too tall, its shoulders sloping inhumanly. But its face wasn't a face. It was a blur, like static on an old TV, constantly shifting. I ran. I don't even remember how I got out of the building. I just remember bursting through the front doors, lungs burning, heart pounding like it was going to explode. I didn't stop until I hit the parking lot. Behind me, through the glass doors, I swore I saw locker 312 slam shut by itself. That night, I called the cops. They searched my house, the school, everything. No intruder, no Polaroids, no yearbook, like it had all been erased. My parents didn't wait around for an explanation. They transferred me to another district within a week. I never set foot in Franklin High again. But I still hear things. A month later, I got a text from Jamie. "Dude, someone else got assigned 312. He hasn't been to class in 3 days." That was the last time we talked about it. He didn't want to say more. Neither did I. Now, years later, I can still see it when I close my eyes. That flickering figure stepping out of the locker, the static face, the Polaroid of me sleeping in my own bed. And I wonder, how long had it been watching me? Was it just when I got the locker? Or had it been there, waiting, through every hallway I ever walked? Sometimes when my house is quiet at night, I hear it. The faint metallic sound of a latch turning. The squeal of hinges opening, like a locker door, opening again. The week Mr. Ashford came to Franklin High was the same week I stopped sleeping. It's the week that turned a boring public school English class into the most disturbing, dream-soaked nightmare of my life. It began on a Monday morning in late October. You know those mornings in high school where the air feels heavy, the sky is gray, and the whole building has that mix of pencil shavings, floor wax, and stale cafeteria food? That was the atmosphere when we walked into third period and saw a man we didn't recognize sitting at Mrs. Green's desk. Mrs. Green had been our English teacher since freshman year. Strict, sarcastic, but fair. She had this habit of smacking a ruler against her desk if people talked too much. Seeing someone else in her chair threw everyone off. The man was tall, thin, sharply dressed in a black shirt with a maroon tie. A leather notebook sat in front of him. He didn't look up as we walked in. He just sat there perfectly still like he was waiting. The bell rang. He finally raised his head. His eyes were dark, larger than they should have been, and when he looked at us, it wasn't like a teacher sizing up his class. It was like a scientist studying specimens. "My name is Mr. Ashford," he said. His voice was low, even, almost hypnotic. "I'll be guiding you this week." Not teaching. Guiding. The choice of words made the hairs on my arms stand up. At first I thought he'd hand out worksheets, maybe roll in the old TV cart and throw on a movie. That's what subs did. But instead, he started asking questions. Not about grammar, not about Shakespeare. Questions about us. How many times do you wake up in the night? Do you hear sounds when your house is quiet? What was the last dream you remember? The class laughed nervously at first. A guy in the back, Trevor, made a joke. Dreams? Yeah, I dream about not being here. A couple kids chuckled. Mr. Ashford didn't. He just stared at Trevor until the smile slid off his face. Then Ashford wrote something in his notebook. The weird part? The page had been blank until the pen touched it. From where I sat, I swear the ink spread like veins across the paper, forming words too fast for him to be writing. That night, kids whispered in the cafeteria group chats about how creepy he was. Nobody had seen Mrs. Green since Friday. The office said she was out for personal reasons. But one of the seniors, Kayla, swore she saw her car gone from the teacher's lot all week. Tuesday was worse. Ashford started class by calling on random students, not for reading or definitions, for secrets. He'd look at someone and say, "Why don't you tell the class about the bruise on your leg?" Or, "Why do you still hide your grades from your parents?" The scary part was that he was right. Sarah, the quiet girl in the front, gasped because she really did have a bruise on her shin. Jason, a baseball player, went red in the face because everyone knew his dad was obsessed with his grades. Ashford would just smile, write in his notebook, and move on. When it was my turn, he didn't ask a question, he just said, "You dream of water." I froze. Nobody knew about that. Nobody knew that I'd been having the same recurring dream for months. A black lake, stretching into the distance, and me standing at the edge, shivering. Always alone. Always cold. That night, I had the dream again. But this time, I wasn't alone. A pale figure stood waist-deep in the water, calling my name. The voice was Mr. Ashford's. By Wednesday, half the class was whispering about nightmares. Same black lake, same pale figure. Some said it had eyes too big for its face. Others said it whispered their names. Nobody admitted it out loud during class, though. Ashford didn't need us to. He already knew. That day, something happened that made me realize he wasn't just strange. He was dangerous. He called me up to his desk at the end of class. Up close, his skin looked wrong, like stretched wax. He opened his leather notebook and turned it toward me. My name was there, my birthday, my address, my parents' names, even my dog's name, all written in that veiny black ink. "I told you," he said softly. "You dream of water." I left without saying a word. Thursday was the breaking point. Midway through class, the lights flickered and went out. We groaned, but Ashford kept talking like nothing happened. The room was pitch black, but outside the windows, daylight still shone. Then, when the lights came back on, everything was wrong. Objects sat on every desk, not papers. Objects. On mine, a feather. Long, black, oily, like it belonged to a bird that shouldn't exist. On Sarah's, a small mound of wet sand that dripped onto the floor. Jason had a dead fish flopped across his notebook. A girl in the back screamed when she found bloody fingerprints smeared across her desk. Nobody saw Ashford move. Nobody saw him place them. He just kept lecturing in that calm, low voice about symbols and literature. That night, when I undressed for a shower, I saw finger-shaped bruises on my arms, like someone had grabbed me hard. They burned when I touched them like they were fresh. By Friday, I didn't want to go. I begged my mom to let me stay home, but she said no, said I couldn't skip again. When I walked into the classroom, the blinds were drawn, though it was morning. The room was icy cold, our breath visible. Ashford stood at the board, smiling for the first time all week. It was too wide, splitting his face unnaturally. "She's not coming back," he said. "Mrs. Green." Nobody asked how he knew. He opened the notebook and turned it toward us. The pages were covered in drawings, our faces, each one perfectly detailed but wrong. Our eyes were hollow pits, our mouths sewn shut with black thread. As I stared, The drawing of me blinked. Then the lights went out. When they came back, time had shattered. 1 second, I was in my seat. The next, I was by the window. Then I was at the back of the room without moving. Everyone was screaming, but their voices stretched and warped like slow-motion tape. Desks rattled, books flew off shelves, and Ashford, he was everywhere. At the front of the room behind me, leaning over my shoulder, whispering in my ear. His voice layered, dozens of whispers saying the same thing. "You belong to the lake." The pale figure from my dream appeared in the corner. Water pooled at its feet, spreading across the tile. The smell of algae and rot filled the room. Some kids slipped and fell into the black water rising from nowhere. I swear I saw hands reaching up from the puddles, dragging them down. I blacked out. When I woke, the room was empty. Desks overturned, papers scattered. Ashford was gone. The notebook was gone. The clock said 4 hours had passed, though it felt like seconds. We never saw him again. Mrs. Green never came back either. The school hired a new teacher a month later, like nothing happened. Most kids refused to talk about it, but I know I wasn't the only one scarred. A couple of classmates transferred schools completely, and the dreams never stopped. The Black Lake still comes to me at least once a week. The pale figure stands closer now. Its eyes are too big. Its voice is too smooth. Sometimes I wake up coughing, choking, my sheets damp as if I'd been pulled under. I don't know what Ashford was. A ghost, a demon, something worse. But I know this. He wasn't a teacher. He wasn't human. And he wasn't done with us. I used to think detention was the most boring punishment in high school. You'd sit in a hot classroom for an hour, scribble half-assed homework, maybe doodle on your desk while a teacher pretended to watch you. Detention wasn't scary. It was dull. That was before the day detention followed me home. It was a Friday in late November, the kind of day where the sky stayed gray from morning to night, and the air inside Franklin High felt heavy, like someone had shut the windows months ago and forgotten to open them again. I was 17, a junior, and I'd racked up too many tardies. My mom was furious. "You're wasting your chances," she said that morning, shoving a piece of toast at me as I ran out the door. So at 3 instead of heading home like everyone else, I was in room 114 with 4 other kids waiting for Mr. Stevens to start the clock. Mr. Stevens was the science teacher, mid-40s, thinning hair, always wearing the same faded plaid shirts. He didn't scare anybody. He just sighed a lot, like he hated his job as much as we hated being there. He slumped behind the desk with a stack of ungraded labs and said the usual line. 1 hour, quiet work. The 5 of us spread out. Jason, the baseball guy, tapped a pen on the desk rhythmically. Sarah, who sat next to me in math, already had her notebook out. 2 freshmen whispered in the back until Stevens shot them a look. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the clock. The air smelled faintly of chemicals, the same lemon cleaner the janitors used every night. About 20 minutes in, the intercom crackled. "Attention, all detention students report to the basement." Every head lifted. The voice wasn't our principal, not even the secretary. It was low, distorted, almost like it had been recorded on a tape deck decades ago. Mr. Stevens frowned. "That can't be right." He picked up the classroom phone. Dead line, no dial tone. He muttered under his breath, then grabbed his keys. "All right, grab your stuff. We'll check it out." We followed him down the hall, grumbling. The basement wasn't a place students ever went. Most of us thought it was sealed off. Too much asbestos, flooding, a fire, depending on which rumor you believed. I didn't even know where the door was until Stevens stopped near the gym and unlocked a heavy metal door I'd always assumed was for storage. The hinges screeched when he pulled it open. A wave of cold, damp air rolled out, carrying the smell of mold and wet stone. The stairwell was lit by flickering fluorescent tubes that buzzed like angry insects. Jason muttered, "Man, this feels wrong." "Just move." Stevens snapped, though he didn't sound confident. We went down. The stairs echoed under our shoes, each step making the air colder. At the bottom was a corridor lined with storage rooms. Old desks stacked to the ceiling, boxes of yearbooks, broken lab equipment. The floor was slick with condensation, and the fluorescent lights above us flickered like they could die at any second. The intercom crackled again, though there were no speakers down there. The same warped voice said, "Detention begins now." Then the door at the top of the stairs slammed shut. The sound rang through the hall like a gunshot. Stevens cursed and ran back up, rattling the handle. It wouldn't budge. He shook it harder, slammed his shoulder against it, but it stayed locked. His face went pale. "Stay here," he said. "I'll find another exit." He disappeared down the corridor. His footsteps echoed, then faded. We stood in silence. The five of us alone, breathing in damp air that tasted metallic. The seconds dragged. Sarah whispered, "Why are the clocks different?" We looked up. Each classroom door had an old round school clock above it. They were all running, but none matched. One said 2:12. Another said 11:47. Another ticked backward, jerking its second hand violently. The one above us didn't move at all. "Probably broken," Jason muttered, but his voice cracked. That's when I saw it. One of the storage rooms had its door open. Inside, lit by the buzzing light, were 5 desks lined neatly against the wall. On each, a nameplate taped to the front. Our names. Jason laughed nervously. Okay, someone's screwing with us. But my stomach turned to ice. I stepped closer, and what I saw made me want to vomit. On my desk sat a Polaroid picture. Me, in my bedroom, asleep. I dropped it like it was burning. The others started checking theirs. Sarah found a lock of her hair tied with string. Jason found one of his baseball gloves, the leather dark and damp. One of the freshmen screamed and shoved back from his desk. On his was a small glass jar filled with teeth. Baby teeth. We panicked. We pounded on the locked door until our fists hurt, screamed for help until our throats burned. Nobody came. Our voices just echoed back at us. Then the lights went out. It was total darkness, the kind that feels solid pressing against your eyes. The air grew colder. My breath came in visible clouds. Footsteps echoed in the hall. Not just one set. Many. Fast. Too fast. Someone sobbed. The lights flickered back, buzzing, and Mr. Stevens was back. He was sitting at one of the desks, his head slumped forward, his mouth sewn shut with thick black thread, lips puckered and bloody. His eyes were open, wide, glassy, darting back and forth like he was still alive, trapped in his own body. Sarah screamed. Jason grabbed a chair and hurled it. The moment the chair hit, the lights went out again. In the dark, the footsteps circled us. Whispers rose, overlapping voices saying our names, stretching our syllables until they didn't sound human. When the lights came on again, Stevens was gone. The hallway stretched longer than before, like it had doubled in size. Doors lined both sides, each one open now. Inside every room, rows of desks, all with nameplates. Hundreds of them. Our names repeated over and over. Jason lost it. He bolted, sprinting down the corridor. "I'm not staying here." His voice echoed until it cut off suddenly, like someone had pressed mute. We ran after him, but when we turned the corner, he was gone. Just wet footprints on the floor, ending mid-stride. The clocks above the doors spun wildly. Some ticked backward, others frozen, a few melting as if the numbers were dripping off. The freshmen started crying. Sarah grabbed my arm. "We have to go." I didn't argue. We ran, twisting through corridors that didn't make sense anymore. One hallway looped back into itself. Another ended in a wall of lockers filled with water that sloshed against the glass. In one, I saw my own reflection, but it smiled even though I wasn't. Finally, we found another stairwell. The door at the top opened easily. We burst out into the gym, gasping, drenched in sweat. It was 3:15. Only 15 minutes had passed, but it felt like hours. The office swore Stevens had left for the weekend at 3 sharp. Said he'd signed out and driven home. The other kids swore they saw him too, but the school brushed it off. Called it hysteria. That night when I got home, I went straight to my room and locked the door. I tried to tell myself it was over, just a prank, just a nightmare. But on my desk, waiting for me, was another Polaroid. This one showed me sitting at the desk in the basement, nameplate in front, shadows behind me. And in the corner of the photo, something tall and thin with arms too long and fingers dragging on the floor. The next morning, my mom found me asleep on the living room couch. I hadn't dared sleep in my bed. I told her I couldn't. She thought I was being dramatic, grounded me for acting out. But that night, another Polaroid appeared. This time, it showed me on the couch, asleep, and the figure was closer. If you've ever been inside your school after dark, you know it doesn't feel the same. During the day, Franklin High was noisy, crowded, and alive. But at night, when the halls were empty, the classrooms dark, and the fluorescent lights buzzing like they were the only thing awake, it didn't feel like the same building. It felt too big, too hollow, like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. That was the night me and my best friend Kyle got stuck there. And instead of just waiting it out, we made the mistake of going up to the terrace. It was a Friday in late January. Cold enough that the windows iced up on the inside. The kind of Midwestern night where you could see your breath even indoors if the heat wasn't blasting. Basketball practice had run late. Coach had us running suicides until almost 6, punishing us for losing the last game. By the time practice ended, the rest of the school was already dark. The hallways outside the gym felt abandoned. Me and Kyle were the last ones in the locker room. The janitor had locked the front doors without checking if anyone was still inside. When we came out with our bags slung over our shoulders, the gym doors clanged shut behind us and the place was silent. He stepped back from the door, frowning. "Dude, it's locked. Why would they lock it this early?" I pulled out my phone. No service. Franklin High was a dead zone even on a good day, and at night it was worse. "We can just wait," I said. "The janitor does rounds. He'll come back." Kyle smirked, his dark hair still damp from sweat. "Or," he said, "we explore." That was Kyle for you. Ever since freshman year, he'd had this obsession with going places we weren't supposed to. Abandoned factories, empty houses, construction sites. He said buildings changed when people left them, that they felt more alive when they were supposed to be dead. I usually went along with it because, well, he was my best friend, and because part of me liked the adrenaline. "Explore what?" I asked, half annoyed. "It's just a school," he grinned. "Ever been to the terrace?" I frowned. "That's not real, that's just a rumor." "It's real," he insisted. "There's a locked stairwell by the science wing. Seniors used to sneak up there before they welded it shut. We've got the place to ourselves." "Why not?" I should have said no. I should have told him we'd just wait at the front doors until the janitor came back. But Kyle had that grin, the one that made it feel like if I said no, I was missing out on something big. So I said yes. We wandered the halls, our sneakers squeaking against the waxed tile. The air smelled faintly of bleach and old textbooks. Every sound we made echoed too loud, bouncing off the lockers and doors. Passing dark classrooms felt eerie. Rows of desks lined up like gravestones, posters peeling off the walls, books abandoned on shelves. "Creepy as hell," I muttered. Kyle just laughed. "Admit it. This is awesome." It took us almost half an hour to find the stairwell. The door was metal, dented, with a faded sign that read, "Authorized personnel only." I expected it to be locked tight, but when Kyle shoved, the handle turned and the door creaked open. A narrow concrete stairwell led up into darkness. No lights, no windows. The air that came down smelled damp and metallic. "This is it," Kyle whispered, like we were about to uncover buried treasure. We climbed slowly, using our phone flashlights. Every step echoed like a gunshot. The higher we went, the colder the air got, until I could see my breath fogging in the beam of my phone. At the top was another metal door, heavier than the first. Kyle braced his shoulder against it and shoved. With a screech of metal on metal, it opened. We stepped out onto the terrace. The night sky stretched above us, black and starless. The football field spread out below, empty and white with frost. Beyond that, the parking lot was deserted, the lampposts flickering. From up there we could see most of the town. Little pinpricks of light in the distance. The smokestacks at the factory glowing faint red. For a moment it felt almost peaceful. The silence, the cold, the sense that we were above everything. "See?" Kyle said, grinning. "Totally worth it." I had to admit it was kind of amazing. Standing on the roof of the school at night, the whole world below us. I almost forgot how wrong the stairwell had felt. Almost. Then we heard it, a footstep. We both turned. The metal door was shut again, but nobody had come through it. The roof was empty. "Probably the wind," Kyle said. His voice didn't sound confident. Then came another sound, a low scraping like metal dragged across concrete. From the far side of the roof, where the shadows pooled deepest, we froze. My heart was pounding. "Kyle," I whispered. "Someone's up here." He raised his flashlight, the beam cutting across vents and gravel. Nothing. But then the air shifted. Heavy, pressing. My ears popped like we'd gone up a mountain. And then, faintly, came voices. Not words, whispers. Dozens of them, overlapping, too fast to understand. They rose and fell with the wind wrapping around us. I grabbed Kyle's arm. "We need to go." He nodded. We turned back toward the stairwell door. It was gone. I blinked. My stomach dropped. Where the door had been was nothing but more rooftop stretching into blackness. Kyle shone his light across the wall. Nothing. Just endless concrete. "No way," he said, panicked now. "No way." The whispers grew louder, circling us. Shadows stretched across the rooftop, too long, moving even though nothing was casting them. Our lights flickered. For a second I swore I saw a figure. Tall, bent, arms dragging along the ground. Kyle yelled, "Hey, who's there?" The whispers stopped. The silence was worse. Then the scraping came again. Closer. We ran. The rooftop stretched forever, looping back on itself no matter which way we turned. The football field was always below us, the town lights always in the distance, but we never reached the edge. The whispers chased us, voices overlapping, hissing our names. "Stop," one of them said, clear as day. Kyle skidded to a halt. His eyes were wide, glassy. He started walking toward the shadows. "Kyle." I grabbed his arm. "Don't." He jerked like he was waking from a dream. His face was pale. It was my mom's voice. Before I could respond, the shadows shifted. A figure stepped forward. Tall, skeletal, face blurred like static. It tilted its head, and the scraping sound grew louder, like claws dragging against concrete. We bolted again. My lungs burned, my legs screaming, but I didn't dare stop. Finally, Kyle shouted, "Jump!" We ran toward the edge. The football field spread below. Without thinking, we leapt. Instead of falling, we landed in the gym. The polished floor squeaked under our shoes. The scoreboard glowed. The clock read 7:05. The front doors were unlocked. We didn't say a word as we sprinted out into the cold night. When I got home, I locked every door and window. My mom asked why I looked so pale. I told her I didn't feel well. I sat on my bed, shaking. That's when I saw it. On my nightstand, a handful of black gravel. And faintly, outside my window, the sound of scraping. Everyone at Franklin High knew Mr. Caldwell was strict. He was the history teacher you didn't test. No gum in class, no talking while he lectured, no excuses for late work. He wasn't the type to joke with students or make learning fun. But people respected him because he was consistent. He was fair. That's what we all thought anyway. It wasn't detention that put me in room 209 that Friday. Caldwell had announced earlier in the week that a handful of us were falling behind and needed extra help if we wanted to pass his final exam. He made it sound like he was doing us a favor, like he was giving up his own time to make sure we succeeded. The truth? I wasn't failing. Neither were the others. But when Caldwell called your name, you didn't argue. You showed up. So at 3:30 on a gray April afternoon, 5 of us sat scattered across room 209. Me, Logan from the football team, his buddy Chris, who never went anywhere without him, Amanda, the quiet overachiever, and Jordan, a wiry senior who had a reputation for fighting. The classroom smelled like chalk and old coffee. Caldwell had the blinds half drawn, the last of the sunlight striping the walls. The rest of the building was already dead quiet. Most kids long gone for the weekend. Caldwell sat at his desk with a stack of papers, glasses perched on his nose. He didn't greet us. He didn't explain why we'd been chosen. He just told us to sit apart and take out notebooks. We obeyed. The first hour was uneventful. He paced the front, scribbling dates and names on the chalkboard, lecturing about Reconstruction like it was a normal after-school session. But something about the way he kept looking at us, holding his gaze a second too long, gave me a knot in my stomach. By 5 o'clock, the halls outside were silent. The janitors had made their rounds and left. A soft rain began, tapping against the windows. I glanced at the clock, willing the time to move faster. That was when the power went out. The lights flickered once, twice, and died. The heater clicked off. The familiar hum of the building stopped. Darkness settled in, broken only by the weak gray light coming through the blinds. Amanda whispered, "Should we go?" Caldwell's voice came from the front, low and steady. "Stay where you are." He pulled something from his desk drawer, an old lantern, metal and glass like he'd taken it camping. He struck a lighter, touched the wick, and a yellow flame hissed to life. The glow stretched across the room, throwing long shadows against the walls. Then Caldwell walked to the door and turned the lock. The click was loud in the silence. The 5 of us exchanged uneasy looks. Chris muttered, "What's going on?" But Caldwell ignored him. He carried the lantern back to his desk, set it down and folded his hands. "Do you know why you're here?" he asked. "To study?" Logan said, half joking. Caldwell shook his head slowly. "No. You're here because you lie. To your parents, to your teachers, to yourselves. Tonight, in this room, you'll tell the truth." My stomach twisted. His tone wasn't lecturing anymore. It was calm, measured, like a judge handing down a sentence. He stood, picked up a piece of chalk, and wrote a single word across the board in tall, sharp letters. "Confession." He underlined it twice. The chalk screeched, making Amanda flinch. When he turned back, his face was unreadable. "We're going to start," he said. The room was dead silent. "Logan," Caldwell said, his eyes locking on the football player. "Tell Chris what you did with his girlfriend." Logan froze. "What?" Chris turned his head sharply. "What's he talking about?" Logan's face went red. "He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about." Caldwell's voice cut in, soft but sharp as glass. "Don't lie. Say it." Chris's jaw clenched. "Tell me, man. Right now." Logan shifted in his seat. "It was one time, okay? It didn't mean anything." Chris shoved his chair back, the legs screeching across the tile. "You bastard!" He lunged and Logan shoved him back. The two of them were suddenly on their feet, fists half raised. "Sit down!" Caldwell roared. His voice cracked like a whip, freezing them mid-motion. Slowly they sat, glaring daggers at each other. The lantern hissed softly. My pulse hammered in my ears. Caldwell smiled then. I'd never seen him smile before. It made my skin crawl. "One truth," he said softly. Now another. His gaze shifted to Amanda. She stiffened. You, he said. Tell them why you really stay after school with Mr. Henson. Amanda shook her head. That's not... I don't... Tell them, Caldwell pressed. Or I will. Tears welled in her eyes. Her voice cracked. He touches me, she whispered. He says it's our secret. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed. No one spoke. Chris stared at his desk. Logan muttered a curse under his breath. Jordan's knuckles were white, gripping the edge of his chair. Caldwell turned to him next. Jordan, tell them why you really broke Kyle's jaw. Jordan's eyes flashed. Because he ran his mouth. No, Caldwell said. The truth. You thought he was sleeping with your mom, didn't you? Jordan's jaw worked like he wanted to deny it, but finally he muttered. Yeah. The room was unraveling. Each confession landed like a grenade, tearing holes in the fragile quiet. Then Caldwell's eyes found me. And you, he said. His voice was almost gentle. Tell them what you did last summer. By the river. Ice filled my veins. He couldn't know. Nobody knew. The memory hit me anyway. The fight, the rock in my hand, the splash, the blood spreading downstream. I don't know what you're talking about, I stammered. Caldwell slammed his palm on the desk. The lantern rattled. Don't lie to me. His voice boomed. Thunder in that small room. I couldn't breathe. My skin prickled. Everyone was staring, but I stayed silent. I couldn't speak it. Caldwell leaned back, adjusting his glasses, his face calm again. Then I'll wait, he said. The hours stretched. One by one, he broke us. Logan admitted he hated his own teammates. Chris confessed he'd stolen from his brother. Amanda whispered things about her family. I wish I could forget. Jordan muttered about violence at home that explained why his fists were always clenched. Each secret cracked the air wider until the room felt suffocating. By 8 o'clock, the lantern's flame sputtered low. The shadows grew longer, stretching across the floor. We weren't 5 students anymore. We were wrecks, red-eyed, shaking, broken open. Caldwell finally stood, straightened his glasses and said, That's enough for today. Class dismissed. He unlocked the door, blew out the lantern, and walked out without another word. We sat in the dark, too stunned to move. The janitor found us half an hour later, still sitting in silence. The aftermath was worse than the night itself. Logan and Chris never spoke again. Amanda transferred schools within a week. Jordan got expelled after another fight. And me? I carried the weight of that night. And the secret I never confessed. Like a stone in my chest. Because Caldwell was right. I did something by the river last summer. Something I've buried so deep I can barely admit it to myself. And sometimes when I wake at 3 in the morning I hear his voice again, calm and patient, whispering the word that still makes my stomach drop. Confess. Every school has a place that feels heavier than the rest. At Franklin High, that was the library. During the day, it was just another part of the building, fluorescent lights humming above, the quiet shuffle of students checking out books or cramming for tests, the smell of dust and old carpet. But after hours, the library felt wrong. Too quiet, too still, like the air pressed down on you. Nobody lingered once the last bell rang. Nobody except us. It was late October, the week before Halloween, and the weather had already turned. The afternoons went dark fast, and the hallways smelled faintly of wet jackets and cafeteria food. Our history teacher had assigned a research project, and somehow I got roped into staying late with 3 others. Megan, who was the smartest in our grade, Tyler, who played varsity basketball and thought he was untouchable, and Cassie, who was quiet, artsy, and always seemed a little disconnected from everyone else. The 4 of us didn't hang out normally, but we'd been assigned to the same group, so here we were, dragging ourselves into the library at 6 p.m. Mrs. Porter, the librarian, was supposed to supervise us. But she got a phone call about her daughter and left in a hurry, saying she'd be back in half an hour. That left us alone in the cavernous room, the doors locked but the lights still buzzing overhead. At first it felt almost exciting. An empty library at night, no one to tell us to be quiet. Tyler joked about playing hide and seek between the shelves. Megan rolled her eyes and pulled out her laptop. Cassie wandered off, tracing her fingers along the spines of books like they meant something to her. I sat up at one of the long oak tables, trying to focus on the project but too aware of how empty the building felt outside those walls. It didn't take long for the atmosphere to shift. The rain started first soft against the tall windows. The clock on the far wall ticked too loudly, each second stretching. I tried to ignore it, but when I glanced up, something made me freeze. The shelves weren't the same. When we'd come in, the aisles had been neat rows running straight to the back wall. Now, from my seat, I could see the nearest shelf bent at an angle, like it had been pushed out. I blinked hard, thinking maybe my eyes were playing tricks in the fluorescent light. But when I stood and walked over, the row stretched longer than it should, like it was leaning into space that hadn't existed before. "Hey," I called, my voice cracking. "Did one of you move a shelf?" Megan barely looked up. "What are you talking about? They're bolted to the floor." I didn't argue, but when I walked back, the aisle seemed to shift again behind me, closing tight. My skin prickled. Cassie's voice floated over from the far side. "These books," she said softly. "They have our names on them." That pulled everyone's attention. We found her standing by a shelf I could have sworn hadn't been there earlier. She held a thick, leather-bound book in her hands. Embossed on the cover in gold letters was a single name, Cassandra Lee. Tyler laughed nervously. "That's creepy as hell. Probably some donor thing." But then Megan reached out and pulled another book from the shelf. The name on it made her go pale. Megan Flores. My stomach twisted as I scanned the shelf. There they were, all of us. Heavy volumes, one for each. I found mine, plain, black, with my name pressed into the spine. We opened them. Inside, the pages weren't blank. They weren't history or fiction. They were our lives. First day of school. My dad leaving when I was 9. The fight Tyler got into last spring. The poem Cassie had read aloud in English. The one she'd sworn nobody remembered. Each detail written in neat type, page after page. Megan's voice shook. "This is everything." I flipped through mine with trembling fingers, watching my life unfold across the pages. Then I stopped cold. The entries didn't end it today. They kept going. They described things that hadn't happened yet. My breath caught as I read words about leaving the library that night and what would follow. Does it say anything about now?" Tyler asked, his bravado cracking. "Yeah," Cassie whispered, tears in her eyes. "It says we don't make it out." The air thickened. The clock on the wall ticked faster, hands jerking forward. We dropped the books like they were burning. Tyler swore, shoving his into the shelf. But when it hit, the book didn't fall. It stuck, like the shelf had swallowed it. That was when the whispering started. At first it was faint, like wind moving through cracks. Then louder, voices overlapping, hushed and urgent, spilling from between the shelves. Dozens of voices, maybe hundreds. My own name hissed from the darkness. Then Megan's, then Tyler's. "Stop," Megan whispered, covering her ears. "Make it stop." We stumbled toward the doors, but when we reached them, they weren't doors anymore. Just another wall of shelves, lined with more books. Each spine carried names we didn't recognize. Some old, some recent. The realization hit like ice water. These weren't donors. These were people. "This place doesn't collect books," Cassie whispered. "It collects us." The whispering rose, frantic now, like 100 readers flipping pages at once. Tyler grabbed a chair and smashed it against the nearest shelf. It splintered, but the books didn't move. Instead, they hummed. A vibration ran through the floor, up our legs, into our bones. And then the reading began. Voices recited our lives aloud from the shelves, word for word, as if the library itself were narrating us. Hearing my childhood spoken back in a dozen overlapping whispers made my skin crawl. Then the voices shifted tense. They weren't reading the past anymore, they were reading what we were doing in that exact moment. Megan Flores covers her ears. Tyler James smashes a chair. Cassandra Lee begins to cry. Andrew Carter tries not to listen. I drop my book, heart pounding. They were reading me. We ran deeper, desperate for any exit. The shelves stretched impossibly, bending and curving until we didn't know where we were. Aisles looped back, walls closed in. Every turn brought us back to the same table, the lantern glow of our abandoned books still waiting. Megan grabbed hers, flipping through frantically. "If it's written, maybe we can change it," she shouted. She tore a page out, but the words reformed instantly, burned into the paper. She ripped another, and another. But each time the sentences returned, describing her every move in real time. Tyler screamed. His book had fallen open to a page showing him running, then tripping, then bleeding. He hurled it across the aisle, but when he turned, he stumbled exactly as the page described. His head hit the edge of a table. Blood streaked down his face, just as written. He lay there gasping, the book beside him flipping its own pages. Megan screamed his name. Cassie grabbed her, pulling her away. But I couldn't move. My own book was open at my feet, the words crawling across the page faster than I could read. It described me standing frozen, watching Tyler bleed. We didn't save him. We couldn't. The whispers grew louder, swallowing our own voices. Cassie clutched her book to her chest, tears streaking her face. "It says I disappear," she sobbed. And before we could stop her, she did. One blink she was there, the next she was gone, her book snapping shut with a hollow thud. That left me and Megan, trembling in the flickering fluorescent light. The clock on the wall spun wildly, hands blurring. Pages in the books rustled like a storm. The voices rose in unison, chanting our names. Megan grabbed my arm. "We have to finish it," she said. Her eyes were wild. "If it's writing us, maybe if we get to the last page." But when she opened her book again, the final page was already written. It described her screaming, dropping the book, and vanishing into the shelves. She looked at me with pure terror just before the words came true. Her book fell, her scream echoed, and then she was gone. I was alone. The shelves around me groaned. My own book lay open at my feet, the last page blank except for a single date. Tomorrow's. My breath came fast, ragged. I slammed it shut, refusing to read, refusing to know. The whispering slowed, then stopped. The silence was worse. When Mrs. Porter returned 20 minutes later, she found me alone at the table, pale and shaking, surrounded by empty chairs. She called the police. They searched the building all night, but there was no sign of Tyler, Megan, or Cassie. No one believed me when I told them about the books. But 2 weeks later, I found mine again. It was waiting on my desk at home, the black cover gleaming faintly in the morning light. I flipped to the last page, my hands trembling. The date was still there, untouched. But now the first sentence had appeared. Andrew Carter wakes up, reads these words, and understands he can never escape the library. And as I stared, more lines began to write themselves, crawling across the page, describing me sitting frozen, refusing to blink. And when I looked up, the shelves were there, behind me. Every school has a place that feels too big when it's empty. For us, it was the auditorium. During the day, it was harmless enough. Talent shows, pep rallies, assemblies where half the kids were falling asleep while the principal droned on. But at night, with the seats vacant and the stage lights off, it felt like a cavern. You could stand dead center and hear your own heartbeat. Every sound echoed too long. The curtains looked heavier, darker, like they were hiding something. I should have known better than to go back there after hours, but sometimes you don't get a choice. It was late February, still cold enough that the air stung your lungs when you walked home. I was a junior, and I'd signed up for AV crew mostly because my older brother Daniel had loved it. He'd been stage manager before me, the one who knew how to run the lights, fix the sound, pull the curtains. Daniel had died the summer before in a car accident. I told people I joined to keep busy, but the truth was, I just wanted to be close to something he cared about. That night, we were supposed to be setting up for the spring play. There were 4 of us. Me, Jenna, who was good with costumes, Marcus, who helped with props, and Tyler, the loud senior who thought being on crew was punishment. We were supposed to run light checks, test the microphones, and maybe sweep the stage. The director had left early, saying she trusted us to lock up. At first it felt normal. The big overhead lights hummed, dust floated in the beams. Jenna climbed a ladder to adjust gels while Marcus dragged a box of props across the floor. Tyler messed with the mic, cracking jokes at full volume, his voice booming through the speakers and bouncing back at us. I tried to ignore him, flipping switches on the control board. It was around 8:30 when things shifted. The first thing was the curtains. They moved. Not a lot, just a subtle sway like someone had brushed past behind them. But the air in the room was still. No vents running. I froze, watching. Draft. Marcus muttered, not looking up. But there was no draft. Then the stage lights flickered. Not a normal flicker either. These were on a secured board, and I hadn't touched a thing. The spots blinked once, twice, then blasted white at full power, flooding the stage so bright I had to squint. "Who the hell's running lights?" Tyler shouted. His mic squealed with feedback, then cut dead. I checked the board. Every switch was exactly where I'd left it. My stomach turned cold. Then, faintly, music started. Not from the speakers, from somewhere deeper. Old piano notes, faint and warbling, like they were leaking through the walls. A melody I knew. Daniel used to play it when he was practicing for pit band. My chest tightened. The 4 of us stared at each other. Nobody moved. Then the curtains parted. Slowly, smoothly, like an invisible hand was drawing them back. The stage beyond was flooded in light, and there were people standing there. At first, I thought maybe some kids had snuck in, but then I recognized them. My breath caught. They weren't alive. There was Amy Porter, who had died of an overdose sophomore year. Kevin Ramirez, who had drowned at the quarry 3 summers ago. Faces we'd all seen in yearbook memorials, standing there under the lights in costumes frozen in place. Their eyes were dull, skin pale, but they smiled faintly, like performers waiting for applause. Then I saw him. Daniel. My brother stood at center stage, dressed in black, headset around his neck just like he always had during shows. He smiled at me, that easy grin that used to calm me down before tests. My heart dropped into my stomach. "Dan?" My voice cracked. The others looked at me like I'd lost it. But he was right there. He raised a hand in greeting. The piano grew louder. The dead students stepped forward. And then they began to speak. Not lines from the school play. Not random nonsense. They spoke our lives. Jenna's voice came first, spilling from Amy's mouth. Jenna Green, who hides cigarettes in her locker, who cries in her car before school every Monday. Jenna's face drained of color. "What the hell?" she whispered. Then Kevin spoke for Marcus. Marcus Boyd, who stole money from his mom's purse, who wishes every day he'd been the one who drowned instead of me. Marcus stumbled back, shaking his head. "No, shut up." More voices joined. Students we'd buried, reading truths we hadn't said out loud. Tyler's affairs, Jenna's secrets, my nightmares. Each line echoed through the cavern, amplified by the emptiness. Then Daniel's voice rang out. "Andrew Carter, my little brother, who was driving the night I died." My blood froze. The others snapped their heads toward me. I couldn't breathe. "That's not true," I whispered, but it was. I'd begged Daniel to let me drive his car that night. I'd lost control on the curve. He hadn't made it out. The stage glowed hotter, the air thick. The dead began to move in unison, like actors taking cues. The lights swung, blinding us. Suddenly, half the seats in the auditorium were filled with shadowy figures, clapping silently, their hands smacking in a soundless rhythm. The play had begun. The curtain ropes dropped from above, snaking around our wrists, dragging us toward the stage. Tyler fought, cursing, but the light hit him, and in an instant he was gone, his seat empty, his shadow now among the audience. Jenna screamed as ropes pulled her onto stage left. Marcus stumbled, trying to pull free, but Kevin's corpse hand reached out, gripping his arm, yanking him into the cast. And me. I was dragged center stage, face to face with Daniel. He looked alive. His skin wasn't gray, his eyes weren't dull. For a second I could almost believe it was really him. He leaned close, his breath warm. "You've been carrying it too long," he whispered. "It's time for your confession." Tears burned my eyes. "I'm sorry," I choked. "I'm so sorry." He nodded, still smiling. "Then speak your lines." A script appeared in my hands, blank pages filling with words in black ink as I looked down. The lines described my guilt, my secret, every moment since his death. My mouth moved without permission, reciting them, each word slicing me open. The audience of shadows leaned forward, rapt. Jenna sobbed through hers. Marcus screamed until his throat bled. Tyler's voice joined from somewhere in the seats, reading his lines even though he was gone. And Daniel's lines. Daniel's lines were the finale. He stepped forward, voice ringing out over the stage. "In every play, someone must exit. Tonight, it's me." "No," I screamed, lunging forward, but the ropes held me. He gave me one last look, the kind he used to give before curtain call, reassuring, proud. Then he turned, walked into the blinding spotlight, and vanished. The audience erupted in soundless applause. The curtains fell. When they opened again, the stage was empty. Jenna, Marcus, and Tyler were gone. Only I remained, on my knees, the script dissolving in my hands. The seats were empty, the lights dimmed. Silence pressed in. When I stumbled out hours later, the school was dark. The rain had stopped, and my watch said midnight. Nobody believed me when I said what happened. They filed missing person reports. The families wept. The school canceled the play. But I know the truth, because sometimes when I pass the auditorium at night, I hear faint applause. And once, walking home alone, I heard Daniel's voice again. Not accusing, not forgiving, just repeating the line I'll never forget. Every play needs its ending.